Before Marilyn Monroe and Jayne Mansfield, there was Jean Harlow, a name that may not echo quite as loudly today, but once stood as the quintessential embodiment of glamour and scandal in Hollywood's golden age. She was the original platinum blonde bombshell, an actress whose carefully cultivated image radiated a shimmering allure that helped define the very idea of sex appeal on the silver screen. Yet as with so many Tinseltown legends, the glitz of her public life concealed a private world rife with personal upheavals, family pressures, and a silent threat that would lead to a tragically early death. To fully grasp Jean Harlow's enduring legacy, we have to step behind the spotlight and examine the collisions between ambition, innovation, and fate that propelled her, briefly but brilliantly, to the forefront of American cinema. Jean Harlow was born Harleen Carpenter on March 3, 1911, in Kansas City, Missouri. She began life in a family that was comfortable financially, if not emotionally. Her father, Montclair Carpenter, found success as a dentist, and her mother, Jean Poe Carpenter, was the privileged daughter of a prosperous real estate broker named Samuel Harlow. When her daughter eventually took on a stage name, it was her mother's maiden name she chose, Harlow. But in these early years, the young Harleen wasn't on any direct collision course with the film industry. She spent her first decade in Kansas City, attending Miss Barstow's finishing school for girls, an institution that reflected Mother Jean's desire to provide her daughter with a refined upbringing. Yet behind the veneers of genteel life, parental strife brewed. By 1921, John Poe Carpenter was done with Montclair and won custody of Harley. She was still in her early 30s, convinced that her own good looks and ambition might unlock Hollywood's gilded doors, if only she could relocate to the West Coast. So off they went, mother and daughter, first to Los Angeles in pursuit of stardom. Mother Jean quickly discovered that ageism was alive and well in the 1920s Hollywood. Producers weren't exactly lining up to offer her acting roles. Unwilling to languish, she opted to move once more, this time settling in Chicago and marrying a man named Marino Bello. Meanwhile, Harleen's life took a sharp turn at the tender age of 16 when she met and fell for Charles Chuck McGrew, an older boy from a wealthy background. By September 1927, they had eloped. When Chuck reached 21, he inherited a trust fund that enabled the teenage couple to move to a plush home in Beverly Hills, where they developed a reputation for throwing convivial get-togethers. At this stage, Harleen had no lofty cinematic aspirations. She was simply a privileged young wife, entertaining friends under the California sun, yet destiny had other plans. One day, Harleen accompanied her friend Rosalie Roy, an aspiring actress, to an audition at Fox Studios. While waiting, she was noticed by studio executives. Her beauty was too striking to miss. They expressed surprise that she wasn't also testing for a part, then offered her a letter of introduction to Central Casting. Harleen initially laughed it off, but Rosalie egged her on. When she finally decided to sign up, she balked at using her real name, opting instead for a borrowed moniker, Jean Harlow. She had no clue that this impulsive choice would reshape Hollywood iconography and brand her forever as the platinum blonde star who made audiences swoon. Back in Kansas City, Mother Jean had always dreamed of seeing her name in lights. Now that her daughter had an inroad, she rushed to Los Angeles, determined to nurture, some would say micromanage, Jean's budding career. By 1928, Jean Harlow secured her first on-screen appearance, an uncredited extra in Honor Bound. A flurry of small roles followed, capturing enough attention to land her a contract at Hal Roach Studios in 1929. She had comedic bit parts, including a short called Bacon Grabbers with Laurel and Hardy, where where she received her first official screen credit as Mrs. Kennedy. During this period, her marriage to Chuck McGrew began to unravel. He disliked her new profession and asked her to quit. Initially, she complied and asked Hal Roach to release her from her contract, but that only lasted a matter of months. Spurred on by Mother Jayne, she left her husband at 18 and dove back into acting, the swirl of Hollywood's promise proving far too compelling to abandon. It was the dawn of the talkies that really catapulted her to national attention. While many silent film stars struggled to adapt, producers like Howard Hughes scrambled to line up fresh faces, whose voices and presence worked for sound cinema. In 1929, Hughes was in the midst of producing Hell's Angels, a lavish war epic initially planned as a silent film. When he decided to convert it into a talkie, the original leading lady, Greta Nissen, was let go because her Norwegian accent didn't suit the role of a British aristocrat. Exactly how Hughes zeroed in on Harlow remains fuzzy. Some accounts say it was the film's leading man, Ben Lyon, who suggested her. Regardless, at just 18, she snagged the part that would change her life. Hell's Angels premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater on May 27, 1930. Critics applauded its breathtaking aerial sequences, but Harlow's performance drew mixed reviews at best. One critic dismissed her as plain awful. Yet it hardly mattered. Her presence was magnetic, and audiences were undeniably intrigued. Hughes, a savvy promoter, capitalized on her looks, offering up a tagline that teased the film's flirtatious nature. "Would you be shocked if I put on something more comfortable?" Despite lukewarm acting critiques, Hell's Angels was a box office success. As for Harlow, the movie established her as the new Hollywood siren, even though no one was quite sure if her abilities went beyond her striking appearance. One aspect of that appearance would soon overshadow everything else: her hair. Harlow's signature platinum blonde look wasn't just happenstance. It was the result of a carefully concocted routine devised by stylist Alfred Pagano at Max Factor. She underwent weekly transformations, saturating her naturally ash blonde locks with a potent blend of peroxide, ammonia, Lux soap flakes, and even Clorox bleach. This dangerous regimen was so harsh that it reportedly generated hydrochloric acid on the scalp, causing her considerable pain and chronic hair damage. Publicly, she maintained that the color was all natural, spinning myths about how she simply inherited a light shade from her family. Behind the scenes, however, the scalp burns, and breakage hinted at the lengths she would go to sustain her marketable mystique. But if it caused real harm, it also ignited a national frenzy. When Howard Hughes dubbed her the Platinum Blonde, stylists across the country attempted to replicate her color. He even announced a $10,000 reward for anyone who could achieve the identical hue, a challenge that went unanswered, mostly because no self-respecting hairdresser would subject clients to the same brutal recipe. In 1931, the film Platinum Blonde cemented her new nickname in the public imagination, and by 1933, after her screwball comedy Bombshell, the blonde Bombshell had entered the lexicon. Soon, Bombshell officially became a term for an alluring woman, its usage popularized by the star who embodied it most vividly. As Harlow's career climbed, her personal life brimmed with both scandal and heartbreak. The mother who pushed her to stardom remained an unrelenting presence. Mother Jayne micromanaged her social calendar, her film choices, even her finances, often in tandem with Marino Bello, whose dubious investments drained much of Harlow's earnings. Then came her second marriage, which would mark a dark chapter. On July 2, 1932, Jayne married Paul Byrne, an MGM executive 22 years her senior. Many believe Byrne to be a calming, caring figure in her chaotic life. Tragically, Just 2 months later, he was found dead from a gunshot wound in their home. Officially declared a suicide, the incident spurred countless rumors. A cryptic note at the scene read, "You understand that last night was only a comedy," fueling speculation of impotence, murder, or an elaborate studio cover-up. Publicly devastated, Harlow was back at work soon after, filming Red Dust alongside Clark Gable. MGM scurried to protect its valuable star from any insinuation of wrongdoing, while reporters probed the possibility of dark secrets behind Byrne's death. If the second marriage ended in tragedy, the third was a fleeting footnote. In 1933, Harlow wed cinematographer Harold Rawson, though the union disintegrated within months. This short string of marriages, all concluding under dramatic circumstances, painted a picture of a star whose personal life was anything but stable. Yet the greatest emotional anchor in her life might have been actor William Powell, her longtime lover and reputed fiancé. There was talk of marriage, but it never materialized before her untimely death. Rumors swirl that she had become pregnant with Powell's child, and that MGM, wary of tarnishing the Bombshell image by having an unmarried star expecting a baby, forced her into an abortion. No definitive documentation confirms that story, yet it lingers in Hollywood lore, adding another layer of intrigue to her already sensational narrative. Behind the public image of a seductive blonde lay a woman of surprising complexity. While the studios often positioned her as a ditzy, flirty character, Jayne was, by many accounts, smart, well-read, and capable of far more nuance than her roles suggested. She devoured novels like the Forsyte Saga on set and cultivated a humorous, quick-witted persona off-camera that belied the dumb blonde stereotype. Her growing frustrations with the film industry's control over her image were partially channeled into writing. During a salary dispute with MGM, she penned a novel titled Today is Tonight, though she would never see it published in her lifetime. It finally emerged in 1965, nearly 3 decades after her death. Those who read it discovered a glimpse of a more introspective, imaginative Jayne Harlow, someone whose creativity was stifled by the narrow confines of early Hollywood's star-making machinery. Even her lifestyle choices offered contradiction. Despite the party girl label often affixed to her, Harlow was not a hard drinker. She reportedly preferred lighter fare, took pains to mind her health, and was far more of a homebody than gossip columns let on. Her Beverly Hills residences, and later the design elements chosen for her mausoleum space, reflected a flair for drama balanced by personal warmth. White-on-white interiors evoked the cool glamour of her on-screen persona, while close friends recalled that she was never happier than when surrounded by pets or immersed in a good book. Hollywood might have clamored for the next salacious angle, but behind closed doors, Jayne Harlow could be surprisingly shy, childlike, and earnest, a far cry from the brassy femme fatale roles she often inhabited. Professionally, the early 1930s were heady times, and Harlow's comedic talents shone through in films such as Red Dust, 1932, Dinner at 8, 1933, and Bombshell, 1933. By then, she had moved over to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, the most prestigious studio in Hollywood, and found a dynamic on-screen chemistry with Clark Gable. Together they starred in a string of hits, weaving playful banter with overt sensual tension in a way that thrilled audiences. Critics who had once derided her acting began noting a marked improvement. She was picking up skills rapidly, and her comedic timing was no small part of that evolution. Though she carried the branding of a bombshell, Harlow's best performances hinted at something deeper, a sardonic edge that cut through the froth. Yet behind the polished illusions, Harlow was rapidly deteriorating. While her hair bleaching routine was brutal, what ultimately endangered her life far more was a problem hidden inside: kidney disease. Modern medicine had little to offer patients with failing kidneys in the 1930s, and Harlow's condition went largely untreated. It's possible that she had suffered kidney damage from childhood scarlet fever, weakening her system. Frequent rumors claimed the bleach seeped into her scalp and caused a lethal reaction, or that she had sustained injuries from a beating, or that a botched abortion led to infection. None of these were substantiated by serious medical records. The more credible explanation is that her kidneys simply gave out, exacerbated by an exhausting schedule, and perhaps the lingering after-effects of earlier illnesses. In May 1937, while shooting Saratoga, reunited yet again with Clark Gable, Harlow began complaining of fatigue, nausea, and abdominal pain. Some co-workers teased her, suspecting a simple hangover, but the seriousness of her condition soon became apparent. She collapsed on set, prompting immediate medical attention. Doctors diagnosed uremic poisoning due to acute kidney failure. Her mother, steeped in Christian Science beliefs, reportedly limited certain forms of medical intervention, though precisely what treatments were withheld remains murky. Regardless, as her condition worsened, nothing in the 1930s medical arsenal could halt her decline. Jayne Harlow died on June 7th, 1937, at the age of 26. Hollywood reeled in disbelief at losing its vivacious star so abruptly. Saratoga was hastily completed with stand-ins and body doubles for her remaining scenes. Clark Gable, bereft and shaken, described filming those final sequences without her as a ghostly experience he hoped never to repeat. Tabloids churned out wild speculations: bleach poisoning her brain, foul play by lovers or family, or hidden medical crises concealed by the studio. Official records unsealed decades later pointed conclusively to kidney failure. The simpler truth that medical science of the era was ill-equipped to address her plight was overshadowed by sensational stories capturing the public imagination. After her death, fans worldwide mourned a star who had seemed so vital on screen, yet was privately grappling with a mortal illness. Her funeral drew throngs of onlookers, and her final resting place at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale became a place of homage to a star who embodied both the promise and the perils of Hollywood. Harlow's crypt was designed with a degree of elegance that mirrored her persona, with rumors circulating that her mother insisted on immaculate white details to echo the actress's famed platinum aura. Looking at her short yet eventful life, it's tempting to see Jayne Harlow as one more casualty of the relentless entertainment machine, a gifted performer undone by physical and emotional strains. But her legacy is more dimensional than that. She was a catalyst for redefining screen sexuality in a pre-code Hollywood that gleefully embraced risque themes before the censors cracked down. Her comedic gifts, once overlooked, revealed a woman capable of sending entire audiences into laughter. Beyond her image as a bombshell, she was an autodidact who scribbled stories and devoured novels. She was also a woman whose personal relationships, marked by scandal, tragedy, and alleged studio interference, hinted at the dark side of the glamorous facade. In the years since her passing, Hollywood has never forgotten Jayne Harlow. Historians and film buffs revisit her work to study the moment when the industry balanced precariously between silent film traditions and the talkie revolution. Actresses who followed, Lana Turner, Marilyn Monroe, Jayne Mansfield, would all channel aspects of that carefully sculpted blonde persona, often struggling with the same question of whether audiences valued them as individuals or as fantasies. Even modern pop culture, which incessantly recycles iconic looks, references Harlow's platinum hair as a touchstone for old-school Hollywood glamour, seldom acknowledging the brutal chemical processes that sustained it. Her name also endures through the controversies that never fully died, the swirling rumors around Paul Bern's death, the whispered tale of a forced abortion, and the tragedy of an abrupt demise that cut her potential short. People remain drawn to these legends, perhaps because they dramatize the perennial tension between the star as an idealized figure and the private individual behind the mask. Harlow, the bright, breezy presence in comedic gems of the early 1930s, was also Harleyan Carpenter, a sensitive soul who wrote fiction in her downtime and might have longed for the simpler days before Hollywood discovered her. Even Clark Gable's reflections in the wake of her passing underscored how integral she had become to MGM's success. Their string of collaborations had proven box office gold, but Gable and others privately admitted they had underestimated her talent until confronted by her absence on set. The emptiness left behind was keenly felt, a testament to how much her spark had fueled the chemistry of their films. In the end, Jayne Harlow's story suggests both the ephemeral nature of Hollywood stardom and the staying power of a genuine phenomenon. She showed that a woman with a wisecracking edge and a willingness to flaunt her sexuality could captivate audiences in an era not always known for progressive portrayals of female characters. She paved the way for future stars to harness carefully curated images, even as her own experience demonstrated the personal toll such an image might exact. She lived so boldly that her presence continues to ripple through pop culture, even though she didn't reach her 27th birthday. There's an inherent poignancy in imagining what might have been. Had medical treatments advanced just a bit more? Had she been able to take extended rest when her body signaled trouble? Had the studio system afforded her a say in her roles and her health decisions? Yet Hollywood's wheels rarely paused for second thoughts, especially in the 1930s. Public demand for new films drove relentless production schedules, and studios saw their stars as contractual assets. Jayne Harlow danced in that spotlight until her body simply gave out, a victim of an era that expected everything and returned little grace. But though her life was heartbreakingly short, her mark on Hollywood was incandescent. She took the screen by storm, introduced the concept of the blonde bombshell into everyday language, navigated multiple marriages and rumored scandals, and still found time to pen a novel that would offer glimpses of her creative aspirations. Her final bow in 1937 left behind an array of questions and a distinctly American myth about what it means to live fast, die young, and dazzle the world in between. Jayne Harlow's spirit endures in black and white classics, in references to that famously dangerous hair routine, and in the countless actresses who adopt shades of platinum to recapture a fraction of her spark. She was more than a pinup or a cautionary tale. She was a self-directed individual forging her own path in a labyrinth of studio contracts, tabloid gossip, and family pressures, determined to remain an integral part of an industry that courted her beauty as much as it overshadowed her genuine abilities. And for those who take the time to watch her old movies, to read about her behind-the-scenes life, or to thumb through the pages of Today Is Tonight, she remains a compelling figure, a platinum enigma whose blend of humor, resilience, and heartbreak still resonates across the decades. Her memory glows with the warmth of a star who burned fast and bright, making her short life story as mesmerizing as any Hollywood screenplay.